Hello and welcome to episode 284 of the Thinking LSAT podcast in Vienna, Virginia. This is Ben Olson. With me is Nathan Fox in State Line, Nevada. How's it going, man?
Great. How are you?
Pretty good. You're gonna go golfing?
I'm going golfing. Yep, my annual pilgrimage to coastal Oregon. Go trudge around in the rain for a few days.
How many people?
24 guys.
Wow,
It
dude, that's a serious group to get together.
To get together every single year. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot, and it's a far trip too to get to this place. It's like we're gonna drive 11 hours probably to get there. My buddy and I.
You, you don't get like a massive Airbnb, do you? For everybody?
No,
Or is
no,
it
no. We stay at the place, and everybody has their own room and everything. This year is going to be
Hmm.
really strange because there's no bars, no restaurants. It's going to just be like golf outside, and then get a burger, I guess, and take it back to the room. Everybody's going to be just like sequestered in their own room. I thought about like bringing my video games and stuff because I don't think we're going to be doing much after the sun goes down.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway, yeah.
Well, have fun. Yeah. Today
Thanks,
on
man.
the show, yeah, we have don't give up. It's hard at first, but it gets better. Sounds like an encouraging email. Someone asks, are my expectations for improvement unrealistic? I don't know. Trump's impeachment defense brief goes into the Woodchipper. That's the personal statement class that Nathan hosts with other demon teachers to destroy or chip apart, I guess. Is that the right way of saying it? Personal statements. But you guys are going to take on this brief, huh? You already did, or you're going to?
No, I wanted you to look at it. This, you'll
Oh, we're doing it right here. Yeah, of
We're
course. That's
doing
why
it
it's on this
together. Yeah.
agenda. Okay,
Hmm.
well, I should probably think faster next time. Pearls versus turds. Read the passage to yourself theatrically. Okay. I don't, that sounds strange. And then we're going to tackle an LR question. This will air on Monday, February 15th. The February LSAT flex is just around the corner. More importantly, the deadline for the April LSAT flex, which is on April 10th, is on February 24th. So that's Wednesday, very soon. Anyways, next week. Email the show at help@thinkinglsat.com. Leave us a review on iTunes. That helps get the word out. We always appreciate that. Thanks so much. Dude, do you want to read this email
Yeah,
from?
this
Oh,
is
this is the one from Adam. Sweet.
yes, this is from producer Adam. Um, he's been doing the sound for our show and the show notes for the Thinking LSAT podcast for forever, and he had a bit of motivational advice for our listeners. It says, "Howdy, dudes. I have a pearl of wisdom that I share with folks who are embarking on big creative projects for the first time, and I think it could apply to 1L hopefuls out there. The advice is this: get comfortable with, quote, the suck. Creative projects usually go like this. A person has an idea that they're very excited about, they have clarity of vision and a ton of energy to bring to their project. They start working, and about halfway through the production, things begin to fall apart. The creator faces unforeseen obstacles. It's not clear whether the project can or will hit the original vision. They can feel lost or overwhelmed. Doubt carries through to an edit phase where principal work is complete and the creator has to take what they've done and turn it into a finished product. For half or more of the edit process, it can seem like the project is not going great, like they have to continually go back to the drawing board. It sucks. But toward the end of the edit process, things start to come around. Things start to click, which sparks some excitement. Good decisions start to build on one another. The creator can start to see again, and they feel connected to their original vision, or they recast a new vision that they hadn't expected but are just as excited about. Then they finish the project, and most of the time it turns out well. They're satisfied with what they did and are excited to do whatever is next. That period from the end of production to halfway through the edit, I call that the suck. And if I'm leading a new creative team, I always let people know that it's likely we will end up in the suck. I let folks know when we arrive in the suck. It can be about 1/3 of the project. If you're familiar with this phase, if you're comfortable in it, if you're aware that it's not a forever place, if you can recognize that this isn't truth, it doesn't actually suck, it just sucks right now, then you can better navigate those moments where nothing is working. It can help you stay focused and push through the unpleasantness so you can get through to the finished product that awaits you later in the game. So, yeah, when you're fucking up LR question after LR question, just know you're in the suck. If you can be comfortable there, you'll know that you won't always be there so long as you keep working on it. Best, Adam.
Cool. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Be ready for the shit, the
Yeah,
suck.
I think our students always refer to that as a plateau, right?
Yeah.
They just, especially because they're paying too much attention to their, every single practice test they take.
Mm-hmm.
They lose focus of the like, oh, I'm supposed to just be learning from my mistakes.
Yeah.
And instead they get so focused on the what's my score, what's my score, what's my score. Then they hit a few practice tests in a row where their score doesn't improve. And then they all of a sudden think that they're in a plateau.
Yeah.
I think Adam would call that the suck.
The suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the best advice is just that you have to keep grinding your way through it. I mean, you're not actually at a plateau. It's probably just the data points are lined up in such a way that you see a trend that doesn't even exist. But then, yeah, it's easy to lose momentum, lose your mojo a little bit.
For sure. I think we also see this when students not only hit a plateau, but also their scores drop for a section. I get it all the time. It's like in class, like, oh, I was scoring typically 4 to 6 wrong in reading comp, and then I got 8 wrong. Do you think this means I'm never gonna do well on reading comp or something? It's like, no. And they're like, I was making so much progress. I had gotten up to this point, and then it dropped back down. It's like, yeah, just look at the questions you got wrong and figure them out. Expect there to be some bad days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's almost numerical illiteracy, right? If you average 4 to 6 wrong, well, you're not going to get 4 to 6 wrong every single time. You're probably going to get 3 wrong sometimes and 9 wrong other times, because that's just how randomness works.
Yeah.
And if people pay too close of attention to that, then yeah, they see that, oh my God, I got -8 this time. And they extrapolate a trend going in the wrong direction, from just one total glitchy. I mean, sure, maybe you had a bad day.
Yeah.
But it's your understanding of the test can't possibly be worse. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Maybe if you study with Kaplan, it does, but it doesn't happen if you study with us. I mean, it's all about like real understanding of the test. So
Yeah.
every day you work at it, your skills are getting a little bit better, even if the data points don't, immediately reflect your progress.
Yeah.
All right. That's Adam. Thank you, Adam, for your motivational email to kick off the show today.
Yeah. All right. This next email: are my expectations for improvement too high or unrealistic? Hey, Ben and Nathan. I started subscribing to the Demon Basic after about 6 weeks with Con. First Demon practice test in December came in at 146. Recent practice test 2 months later felt really good. Okay. I answered about 3/4 of each of the sections, getting 100% of the 3 games I got to. Wow, nice work. And missing 1 on reading comp and 2 on logical reasoning. This put me at a 158, which is still a ways away from my goal of 170. In my drilling, I'm now getting all of the logic games correct, almost all of the reading comp questions correct, and about 75% of logical reasoning, but with pretty difficult questions. I'm happy with the fact that I've followed your advice on the podcast to slow down to really understand everything. But now I'm feeling that I need to speed things up to get the score I need. I had been hoping that I'd be closer to 170 after 3.5 months of consistent and focused study, especially now that I'm really understanding most of the material. I'm discouraged to see just how much more quickly I need to move to get to more of the questions and raise my score. Were my expectations unrealistic? Do I just keep plugging away at this consistent practice, which includes watching the video explanations, mixing in practice sections as well as tests, and always reviewing afterwards? Thanks for any help you can give. Um, okay, well, there's a couple of questions in there and some odd problems. What do you think?
It's a it's a very common and very dangerous instinct that people have,
Yep.
that they think that they at some point need to start speeding it back up again. A made really rapid progress. I mean, in 2 months went from looks like 146 to 158.
12 points.
12 points of LSAT improvement that covers probably 30% of the curve, 25,
Yeah,
30% of all other test takers. You're now
possibly more because
outscoring.
it's right in the middle of that bell
It's the
curve.
middle of the curve. That's the harder part of the curve to get over because there's so many people that are between 145 and 160, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you think your problem is speed, but your problem is still not speed. I mean, games maybe, but you can't like try to go fast on the games, right? A's getting 3 perfect games now, which is great. If you're going to score in the 170s, you probably need 4 perfect games. It's real hard to score in the 170s without perfect logic games.
Yep.
But I don't think you can start trying to go faster. If you do, it's probably just going to backfire completely. You're going to crash and burn. Like you're going to run across a game, you're going to you're going to try to go fast, you're going to misread something, or you're going to miss an inference that you could have made. And then the game's going to take you longer and your accuracy is going to suffer. That's my hypothesis about what's going to happen on the games if you try to go faster. And logical reasoning and reading comp, it's only one data point, but this last practice test, they did 3 passages and missed 1 question. They did about 75% of the logical reasoning and missed 2 of them. I think the biggest problem is that this listener has 170 in their mind, and they're going to try to score 170 before they score 160. I think you got to get there in baby steps, and I don't think that has anything to do with speeding up. I think, hey, if you just get 1 more question per section right, which has nothing to do with speed, it has everything to do with accuracy, you're going to already be at 161 instead of 158. And then if you could just incrementally chip away at it from there, next stop 165, and then we could start talking about 170. But if you decide to change your strategy here and start trying to go faster, my hypothesis is you're going to be back at 146, not moving forward to 170.
Yeah, it's also interesting that this person is focusing on the 3 0.5 months of consistent and focused study. They joined the Demon in December, and it's early February right now. So we're talking 2 months of presumably approaching the test and studying for the test in the right way.
Yeah, the
Going up
first month
12
and a
points
half.
was was misguided. But I mean, going up 12 points, even just from when you joined the Demon and had the 146 in 2 months is a victory for anyone. So, I mean, it's not surprising, but at the same time, it's nothing to be sad about on any level. That's incredible. So keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, life-changing amount of improvement. I would say you're on exactly the right track. I wouldn't change anything. I definitely would not start trying to go faster. You're going to crash and burn if you do that. All you're going to do is you're going to be trying to play a game that you don't actually have. Try to play a game that's just not possible for you to play right now.
Yeah. Think about it this way. If this person spends 2 more months and gets another 12 points to get to that 170, that's 24 points in 4 months. By any standard, anyone who does that should be extraordinarily happy. So yes, I think your expectations are unrealistic in terms of your timeline.
I don't like numeric goals. LSAT point goals, I never approve of anyway. So it's just, you need to be focused on actually understanding one more question. That's it. You don't need to be thinking about 170. Right now, it's a dream for you. And I'm not saying that it's not realistic for you to get there. I'm just saying it's not helpful for you to be trying to get there now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
There's
let's
so
get to
many
160.
analogies.
Let's get to 160. And that's going to come from one more question per section, one fewer mistake per section, and you're already in the 160s.
Yeah.
And that's a huge, by the way, Ben, what's the difference between, in law school admissions terms, what's the difference between a 161 and a 158?
Quite a bit.
Yeah, it's significant.
Maybe 20 to 30,000 applicants potentially.
Yeah, and maybe $20,000 to $30,000 probably. I think that
Or
one
more.
LSAT point is probably worth 10 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just, maybe 170 is your long-term goal, but I would chop that up into shorter term goals. And I'd be trying to grind out that 160 and then try to grind out that 165 before you're, instead of blowing up your whole game to try to instantly get a 170.
Yeah.
That ain't it.
I mean, you got to make a physical analogy because your brain is physically changing. If you were preparing for a marathon and your goal is to do it in, some miraculous time, and you've never run before, and you go, okay, well, I'm going to go run a marathon and I'm going to try to get this amazing time. And then you get injured. No one would be surprised. They'd say, what were you doing? Break it up. Get running a mile first.
Yeah.
Can you run a mile?
Yeah. Or like, oh, I started doing some push-ups recently. I've been doing push-ups pretty diligently for 2 months, but my goal really is to bench press 350 pounds. So I'm just gonna get right on the bench and just throw 350 pounds on there.
I follow The Rock on Instagram. I'm just trying to get to where he's at. Is this unrealistic? Yeah.
You
Okay.
got to be happy with the progress you've made so far, and then you've got to just try to incrementally add on to that. But yeah, I think you'll go backward if you try to speed up.
Cool. Thanks for writing in. Anything else for A?
No, thank you. Let's move on to this. this is just ridiculous. Can you click on this? Can you look at
I got it. Mm-hmm.
the link? You've got it.
Yep.
This is an actual legal brief
Okay.
filed in the court of the United States Senate. In RE, impeachment of former President Donald J. Trump. Trial memorandum. This is coming at you from Bruce L. Castor Jr., Esquire, David Schoen, Esquire, Michael T. Vanderveen, Esquire. They are collectively counsel to the 45th President of the United States.
Oh my God.
Just scroll down, Ben, past the table of contents. I just wanted to show you this introduction.
Okay. Yeah.
You want to read it?
Sure. Introduction. During the past 4 years, Democrat members of the United States House of Representatives have filed at least 9, and then they put the number 9 in parentheses, resolutions to impeach Donald J. Trump, the 45th President of the United States, each containing charges more outlandish than the next. One might have
Wait a
been
second.
excused.
That doesn't even make sense. Wouldn't it be more outlandish than the previous?
Yeah, than the previous.
The way they wrote that, this is their very first sentence. And what it means is everyone is getting less and less outlandish.
Yes, they're becoming more and more reasonable over time.
Well, including this most recent one where he incited an actual insurrection inside the Capitol building. But that's what they're trying to defend him from here. So there's the first sentence, but keep going.
One, and there's already 2, I should note, footnotes in that one sentence. One might have been excused for thinking that the Democrats' fervored hatred for citizen Trump and their Trump derangement syndrome would have broken by now, seeing as he is no longer the president, italics.
It's in italics.
And yet, for the second time in just over a year, the United States Senate is preparing to sit as a court of impeachment, but this time over a private citizen who is a former president. Oh my goodness. Talk about word vomit.
That sentence has a yet and a but and italics and
scare quotes.
Why are they calling him Citizen Trump?
In caps.
And
jeez.
Yeah, in title case, Citizen Trump, and then also in title case and scare quotes, Trump derangement syndrome.
I almost thought it was like a movie title, Citizen Trump, Citizen Kane. What is going on here?
Correct me if I'm wrong. This is a legal brief.
I don't know what it is, dude. It's a joke. That's what it is. Oh
Maybe the whole proceedings are just a sham. I mean, it's a trial that's happening in the Senate. So, maybe it's just an inherently political thing. And maybe this isn't supposed to feel like a legal brief.
Yeah.
But it's written in the whole, it's all formatted to look like an actual legal brief. But now it's just hysterically popping off about Trump derangement syndrome and calling him Citizen Trump and using italics. What?
Well, the kind of people who would accept this case are, I don't know, not likely to be the top of their game, maybe. I have no idea about any of these people, but in this country, the brief continues, the Constitution, not a political party and not politicians, reigns supreme.
Why did they capitalize country?
I don't know. These are such basic things. I'm not even sure you should capitalize the Constitution, but
you definitely should not capitalize country like that. I mean, what?
But Nathan, it reigns supreme.
These guys are fucking clowns, man. I'm serious. Like, this is the type of shit that if this was on a law school personal statement, you get denied from law school. You just look like an idiot.
Yeah. And apparently they went to and graduated from law school. They continue, but through this latest article of impeachment, now before the Senate, Democrat politicians seek to carve out a mechanism by which they can silence a political opponent and a minority party. The Senate must summarily reject this brazen political act. No period. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing that caught my eye first was no
You could put this through
period.
Grammarly and they would have caught this shit.
Yeah.
Jeez
No
Louise.
period at the, I mean, Google Docs would autocorrect to tell you that you need a period. Like, want to read one more sentence?
Sure. This rushed single article of impeachment. Wait a sec. They capitalized article of impeachment before. Maybe they're not doing so now because we're talking about an individual one of them. But
No,
anyways,
they just are bad at editing. They're bad at writing. They're bad at their job. These are not good lawyers. They
yeah. Uh-oh. We found the missing period. Okay, so
yes.
anyways, this rushed single article of impeachment ignores the very Constitution from which its power comes and is itself defectively drafted, period. Okay, so they moved the period from before and they put it down here. That's interesting. In bringing this impeachment at all, the members of the House leadership have debased the grave power of impeachment and disdained the solemn responsibility that this awesome power entails. Wow, they really work for Trump, don't they? I mean, they dropped in the word awesome in here.
Yeah, it's a grave power and an awesome power in the same sentence. It's like these guys were trying to make the brief as long as they could. It's like a 7th grader doing a writing assignment where there's a minimum length.
Yeah, well, I imagine that's what it's like working for Trump. He's like, where's the damn brief? And then he's probably going to look at a few things. He needs to see them giving him the hurrah. And they're like, here you go, Mr. Trump. We did it. Here it is.
Well,
And
he's so stupid and borderline illiterate that he would probably be like, oh, my brief is 68 pages and their brief is only 42 pages.
look at all the evidence we've provided. It's good evidence. It's substantial.
It's
the best
it's great
ever.
evidence.
The best defense that's ever been presented before the Senate in an impeachment trial. Oh, really? Okay, well, there's only been 3. Oh, man. Okay, well, thanks for sharing.
I actually did skim through the whole thing. There are typos throughout. They go back and forth between 1 space between sentences and 2 spaces between sentences. There are places, top of section 2, there's clearly 2 spaces in the middle of a sentence for no reason.
Oh, yeah.
It's just it's shockingly bad, and it's just kind of not that surprising.
Wait, I just want to read this. Counsel for the 45th president hereby stipulate. Oh, by this brief, that's how you're stipulating that what happened at the Capitol by those criminals was horrible and horrific in every sense of those words. Oh, okay. Glad to get that clarification. Yeah,
Horrible,
you're right.
and horrific in all senses of both of those words. Wow.
Yeah, they're really wordy. They really just like to put words on the page.
These guys are clowns. This is terrible. Whoever these people are should be ashamed of themselves. And it's just not surprising. If you think about what Trump did, he alienated every single person who ever worked with him for 4 years, right? Including,
and before that, yeah.
Yeah, including multiple sets of legal counsel.
Yeah.
And so now he's just really clearly scraping the bottom of the barrel here to get anybody to defend him.
Yeah.
Um, who cares? I'm just glad he's doesn't have a microphone in front of him all the time anymore.
Yeah.
That's that.
I had to Google this guy, and the Washington Post came up, and it just said this caster guy is a magnet for controversy. Well, surprise, surprise. Um. Okay. Anyways, thanks for sharing. Where are we at? Oh, what's this thing right below that?
Oh, Jackson had an idea for the show. I'm not sure exactly how we can make that work. He, if we were going to rewrite these sentences, should we do that? Should we try to rewrite one of these sentences from this brief?
Okay. Yeah. I
Okay.
wouldn't. I mean, it's most likely the case that we're just gonna have to cut the whole thing. Let's see. Would you want to start at the beginning?
I mean, like their ideas are also bad, right?
Yeah.
It's not just that their writing is bad, their style is bad, their punctuation, their grammar, it's all bad.
Yeah.
But their ideas are also bad. So the first sentence starts with, during the past 4 years, Democrat, by the way, they always say Democrat members of, that can't be right. I don't think that's how you refer to a like Democratic member of the Congress.
Yeah. They were worried about the confusion between democratic
Yeah.
values, maybe, and democratic members
So,
of the Democrat Party.
you know, the
Anyway.
first thing that they start with here is, hey, they've filed 9 resolutions to impeach our guy over the past 4 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Is that really their best fact?
That's their first sentence.
I mean,
Yeah.
if this were a criminal defense,
Yeah.
there are rules of evidence that actually prevent the prosecution from bringing prior charges into the trial
Because it's gonna hurt
because it's
the
damaging
defendant.
information to your client. So, but instead, but these guys, they want to lead with that fact that, hey, they've tried to, this is the 9th time that they have filed resolutions to impeach my guy. It's only the 2nd time that it actually made it to a trial, but this is the 9th time that the entire House of Representatives, you know, debated whether to impeach this guy.
Our bully has been pulled into the principal's office 9 times. You realize that?
And they can't see outside of their own weird bubble. So they think that they're making a case.
Yep.
Like they're defending him because he's being harassed. That's what they
He's
think they're doing.
abused. Yeah, it's
Oh, we
gee.
feel so sorry for him. You know, oh, he would never do anything to harass anybody.
That's the whole narrative. Conspiracy, the election was rigged, right? It's always been, oh, I'm a victim. Every president has had to take shit, but not this much. And there's a reason.
Because they aren't as much of a shithead as he is.
Exactly.
I mean, if they are going to go with that idea, can we rewrite that awful sentence for them?
Sure. Well, okay. I would want to know something about these resolutions, how many of them failed, maybe. But you could say over the past 4 years.
Well, I think 7 of them failed and 2 of them succeeded. This is his 2nd actual trial for impeachment.
I think
So they debated articles of impeachment.
I think there was more than one at each time. But anyway, okay. Yeah. Regardless, they debated them, and they didn't get passed on, right?
They debated 9 resolutions to impeach, is my understanding, and
Mhm.
actually impeached him twice. Maybe just don't lead with that.
Just bye. Yeah. Okay. What's the next sentence?
It says, one might have been excused for thinking that the Democrats' fevered hatred for Citizen Trump and their Trump derangement syndrome would have broken by now, seeing as italics, he is no longer the president, end italics. And yet, for the second time in just over a year, the United States Senate is preparing to sit as a court of impeachment, but this time over a private citizen who is a former president.
Wow. So, yeah, cut the first sentence and then drop this sentence into President Trump or former President Trump is no longer in office. Period.
Yeah,
Right?
that's one of their grounds for defense, by the way. That's one of the actual legal arguments that they're making.
Yeah. And make that plainly clear instead
That,
of burying it in like this like
well,
fiery rhetoric.
well, no, because all they're doing is like they're writing for people who are inside the echo chamber.
Mhm.
You know, this bringing up Citizen Trump. What? That's unbelievably scary for anyone
Yeah.
who's not on their team.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about Trump derangement syndrome, you know, that's just like an idiot right-wing joke that people make.
Did that get coined on like Fox News or something? I don't
Yes, it has
understand.
to be something like that.
Mhm.
And with all that stuff, then they're burying their actual argument, which is, hey, the argument that they're trying to make is impeachment is for removing people from public office.
Yep.
He's no longer in public office. Therefore, he can't be impeached.
Next paragraph.
Yeah.
Hmm.
All right, let's
Yep.
just get off of this. Fuck this guy. This is ridiculous.
All right. So the next thing is pearls versus turds. We have 11 pearls, by the way, that we've reviewed on the show. 42 turds, 21 ties. This comes from a devoted listener. Hi, Ben and Nathan. Oh, Ben, Nathan, and A Dot. Oh, this is a devoted listener. This
Okay.
person knows that we call Annalisa A Dot. I am an active user of the Demon, and this Pearl submission has been inspired from attending Nathan's Thursday class. Like a lot of others, I love story time. That's where Nathan reads the reading comp passage and helps people see how he would read and understand it. And I found it extremely helpful with my reading comp accuracy. I think one of the most obvious reasons why story time is so successful is because Nathan is knowingly reading the passage to an audience. The advice, engage with the passage, can be pretty meaningless, but read the passage as if you are speaking it on a podium to an audience could be more objectively applied. I've found that reading the passage in my head as if I'm giving a really important presentation can really help me with my general interest in the passage and with remembering information from the passage. I really believe, you like the word really, by the way. I really believe that you could quickly get students to engage with a passage on a deeper level if they were told to read it as if they were giving a speech. Inflection emphasizes meaning in everyday life, and that should hold true on the LSAT as well. Thanks for your time. What do you think?
Um, there's something there. I mean, I don't know that I would just straight up give it a pearl.
Could you imagine yourself standing up in class and saying, when you read this in your head, read it theatrically?
Um, it's one way of thinking about it, I guess. I could certainly see it being useful to some people.
People do ask a lot, hey, how do I do well in the passages that I'm not interested in? And this devoted listener refers kind of alludes to those ones. I always tell them, fake it until you make it, right?
Yeah.
Pretend to be interested. And that has been shown to work on the LSAT and elsewhere. Like, that's not just something unique to
Right.
us, but maybe this is a form of that. Like, you're essentially pretending that it's important by pretending that you're reading it to an audience.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I'm kind of concerned that you could do a dramatic reading of something without really understanding what it says.
You definitely could. You're much more focused on how the words sound and whether you're reading them in cadence or whatever, as opposed to actually grasping the meaning.
Yeah. Like, it's not you need to take it out of the language that they actually use and put it into your own language to understand it. And I worry that that's not what people think about if they think about a performance or a speech or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you certainly don't want to be reading this off a teleprompter, the words are just like scrolling past and you're just kind of like reading each word separate from the meaning of all the other words. That we definitely don't want you to do.
I don't see myself standing up and saying, hey, try to read it as if you're in front of an audience.
I think I understand what they're saying. And I do think it makes sense for them.
Yep.
But yeah, if the measure is this a thing that we're going to steal and start using in all of our classes? Probably not.
Thank you for writing in.
Give it a tie.
Sure.
Oh, you're
As
going
a
to have to
devoted
do
listener,
it. For some
he or
reason, I
she
don't have
probably
edit.
knows. Oh, really?
Can you change that to 21 ties or 22 ties?
There we go.
The scoreboard right now, for all the years we've been doing this, we've received 11 Pearl submissions, 42 turds, and 22 ties. So it's about a 6-to-1 ratio of turds to pearls.
Yep.
It's not good. It's not good out there. I'm glad you like my class. I'm glad you like story time. I mean, what do we do in story time? I'm trying to think of why it is successful. And the reason why it's successful is because I read the passage well. I mean, yeah, I'm engaged with it.
You're also commenting on it, though, right? I haven't watched your story time yet, but that's what I do.
And that's the thing that this devoted listener is missing, I think, is that I'm not just performing the passage as if it were Shakespeare and I'm going to like just, read every word as Shakespeare wrote it.
Yeah.
That's the exact opposite of what I'm doing. I'm reading one sentence and then I'm talking about it.
Yep.
And am I performing? Yes. I love to hear myself talk. I've got a big audience in the class. I have fun with it. So for sure, it is a performance. Mm-hmm. But I'm actually performing the stuff in between the lines more than I'm performing the lines themselves, right? Yeah. I'm reading the lines, of course, but then I'm like taking time to editorialize and comment and personalize it and invent examples of what type of thing they might be talking about.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one about gray marketing and parallel importation? I think it's a test J thing. So we've seen it a million times, but I went on a whole tangent as I was reading that passage the other night. I went on a whole tangent about like gray marketing, parallel importation, trademarked goods being sold to a store, and then that store is reselling them to other channels. And it's like, you have to make sense of it, right? And so then I ended up going on a whole thing about like, well, hey, maybe let's think about a trademark product. Okay, Air Jordans. Oh, so maybe what we're talking about here is Nike selling Air Jordans to Foot Locker. And then the gray marketing comes in when Foot Locker turns around and sells it to their buddy out on the street,
Hmm.
or sells it across the border into Canada. And then I was able to like personalize all of the little bits that actually came through in the rest of the passage.
Yeah.
But that's not, I just don't think that read it as if you were reading it to an audience is going to convey all that. And I think that that's the actual important part.
It's way more interactive. It's more like reading Rainbow, or they're reading it and like talk. Actually, I don't know what they did in Reading Rainbow, but I imagine like the guy like actually talking about it. But it's even more than that. It's more like a panel talking about some article that was written.
Yeah, it's much more like a it's kind of like a if it is a stage performance, it's a lot more like a two-person stage performance,
Yep.
right?
Like an
Because what I'm
interview.
really doing
Mhm.
is riffing off of the it's like the passage is the other person on stage,
100%. Mhm.
and I am reading their lines, but then I'm improvising all kinds of lines in between, right? I'm having a conversation with the passage.
Mhm.
That's what we mean by engagement.
Yep.
It's like a conversation with the author where, yeah, you're going to read their side, but then you're going to fill in like, oh, do you mean XYZ? Oh, I see. I bet you mean this.
Not to belabor this, but maybe the best analogy is like an NPR interview. The person being interviewed is the author and they are guiding the discussion, but the interviewer, the
Terry
is
Gross.
taking in what they're hearing, they're restating it in much simpler language, and they're asking questions that most people would have while reading that shit or listening to that shit, and saying, okay, what about this? And it's just amazing how clearly those interviewers can just kind of restate what they heard
Yeah. You're
and
not just
get to
reading
the
the
point.
passage, you're interviewing the passage,
Yeah.
because you have to keep asking those clarifying questions or proposing examples for them. Like, wait, you just said ABC. So do you mean DEF?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they don't, but you have to be kind of predicting what
Yeah.
where you think they're going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not just a dramatic reading of the passage. I actually kind of want this to be a turd now. Yeah, it's a listener. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
All right, we got a success story. This was written to you from Emily.
Okay. It says, hey, Nathan, I'm writing to say thank you, and hopefully you can share some of this with podcast listeners or your Demon classes. I always appreciated the balance of you telling us not to go to law school with some success stories. Haha. I used a Kaplan book and Khan Academy, parentheses, good grief, to prep for my first LSAT and wound up with a 152 after a cold 149. That's pretty terrible.
Yep.
A cold 149 is not bad at all.
Not bad at all. Very normal.
But from a cold 149, you should be in the mid to high 150s pretty quickly.
Yep.
Otherwise, I think you need to change what you've been doing. That goes that goes for all of our Demon subscribers as well.
Yep.
Cold 149. Been studying with the Demon for 6 weeks. Still stuck in the low 150s. Maybe we're not working for you.
Maybe you need to go to more classes, or you hit the ask button too. I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
change something and figure
Yeah.
out, ask us what the hell is going on, and we'll see if it's our fault or yours.
Yeah. Kaplan and Khan are just doing a bad job. After 4 months of using the Demon, the last 2 with a live subscription, I scored a 168 on the January LSAT. Nice. Okay.
Wow.
Banging their head against the wall with Khan and Kaplan. 4 months of a Demon subscription. That's an investment of time and money.
Yeah.
But it paid off with a 16 point official improvement. Goes on and says, this score is above and beyond the 75th percentile at my target schools and multiple points higher than my highest practice test score. I thought the games were the easiest of any test I had taken. But then again, I ran out of games to drill a few days before my official test. So maybe the test didn't get easier. I just got better at it. That's
100%.
Yeah, 100% guaranteed the case. That I don't think that the most recent LSAT was any easier or harder than any other previous LSAT. Every test that comes out, Ben, we get emails telling us how easy it was and how hard it was.
Yep.
So yeah, it was easy for you, Emily, because you did every single game that was ever released. I have been working a total of 60 hours a week at 2 jobs, one of which is as a healthcare worker in the midst of the pandemic. Think labor and delivery nurses taking care of male surgical patients because the hospital was such a shit show. I also have a 1-year-old and no childcare outside of my husband, who also works full-time, and myself. I studied for an hour of my son's daily nap and an hour after he went to bed at night on the days I wasn't at the hospital. I've included this because one of my first thoughts after a short ugly cry on score release day was of a woman in one of your live classes a few months ago. She was on the verge of tears talking about how hard it is to study with a family. It really fucking is. And that she just needed a 155 to apply this cycle. I wish I could give her a hug and tell her and everyone else struggling in their LSAT journey to just keep practicing and taking your advice and Katie's, because she is the absolute best. That's LSAT Demon teacher Katie, who everybody loves. Thank you again for all of your advice, the much needed laughs during live classes, and particularly funny question explanations, and the tough love. Praise the Demon, Emily.
That's awesome.
There's a lot there to commend. I mean, pretty diligently studying for 4 months with 2 jobs and a 1-year-old.
Yep.
That cannot be easy. And I don't think I even have that in the tank. Like I would have failed, I think, if I was Emily. But, she made it a priority. Can you imagine what kind of sacrifice that looks like? Her coworkers are telling her about The Bachelor. You got to catch up. I know you got it recorded. You got to catch up on The Bachelor, It's Monday nights on ABC. It's such a good show. And they're talking about it at work every day. And she goes home from work, puts the kid to sleep. And even though she's been working all day, she does not go for The Bachelor rerun or recording. Instead, she goes and sits down and does an hour worth of LSAT studying.
Yeah. I mean, it's It's a sacrifice. It's impressive. It also kind of, I think, models how some people should think about LSAT studying. Um, in some ways, the constraints on Emily's situation or her environment could have helped her, in the sense that I'm not saying that I would wish this situation on anyone, but when you know that you have an hour to study and that's it, you get in, you study, you stay focused. I feel like I tend to get more shit done when I know I have a time constraint than when I don't, because you necessarily have to choose the most important things to work on. You have to stay focused. And in some ways, that's the best way to study. Get in, do a good hour, get out. Get in, do another good hour. So if she was ending up doing 2 hours a day, at least for her LSAT, I'm not saying for everything else, that was probably a good scenario and something people should copy.
Yeah, she got the opportunity to practice her sacrificing as well. You know, like
Okay.
she's stronger now than she was before she did all this.
Oh, for sure. Yep.
And like everybody thinks that life's going to get easier. That's so ironic. I mean, the truth is, I think, until maybe you're like in your 70s, at which point your whole body's breaking down. But like before we get there,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you get in your 70s, I think life can slow down sometimes for people.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I don't know about you, Ben, but my late 20s were busier than my early 20s, and my 30s were busier than my 20s. And now I don't have kids, but if I had had kids, I imagine that my life would just constantly be getting busier and busier and busier.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she's got the 1 year old now, but 3 years from now, she's going to be in law school. She might have a 4 year old and a 1 year old
For sure.
and be in law school,
Yeah.
you know? And in legal practice, it's just, this sounds very lawyerly to me.
Mm-hmm.
Grinded it out for 4 months and um, carved out, you know, she probably wanted nothing more than a nap while the kid was taking the nap.
Oh, for sure.
She could easily
Especially
have
with
just
a
passed
nursing
out.
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those have pretty long hours. So,
Yeah. But instead, you know, she's just got that fire, and she just instead of taking that nap, she just fires up the demon and does an hour worth of prep while the kid is mercifully asleep.
yeah.
Uh Law school is going to be harder. So this is a really good head start on the type of diligent, super hard work, super dedicated work that she's going to have to do in law school.
And study habits. Schedule your time, get in, do it, get out.
Yeah. Amazing.
Anyways. Yeah. Thanks, Emily. And good luck.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a logical reasoning question, test 65, section 4, question 20,
All right.
titled Use of Color.
Let's do it.
Let me read it, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so this says when teaching art students about the use of color, teachers should use colored paper rather than paint in their demonstrations. Okay, right now I'm thinking this sounds like a conclusion, right? This person is telling teachers what they should do. They should use colored paper rather than paint. Um, I'm expecting evidence as to why they should do that.
Yep. We talked about this just last week.
Mm-hmm.
Should is the F word of the LSAT. And you really need to notice it when it pops up.
Yep.
It's the most important word in that sentence. They're all important, but the word should is really, really important there, because the speaker is telling someone else what to do.
And in my head, I'm visualizing colored paper, literally that like kind of rough paper
Construction paper.
and construction paper and paint. And I'm saying, okay, they're preferring this one over that one. I don't know why, but I'm curious.
Yeah, you're trying to teach students about red. I'm seeing the red, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The teacher has two choices. The teacher can paint the wall red, or the teacher can hold up a piece of red construction paper. If that's your choice as a teacher of art students, this speaker says you should use colored paper rather than paint, which, would you have any preconceived notions? Having not seen this question before, would you have any idea why?
No, but right now I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense to me because I don't want to go painting stuff. That just seems like a mess and
Just
work, right?
messiness. Sure. For just the sheer messiness. Yeah. The school janitor is going to agree with this plan of like, let's get out the colored paper instead of getting out the actual paint inside the classroom. Okay. All right. And that's fine. That's perfect hypothesis to have, right? We're just trying to make sure that we keep our footing here.
Yep.
Like, what are we talking about? Oh, well, we're telling art students how to teach about color,
Mm-hmm.
and we should use the colored paper instead of the paint. Okay.
Okay. Colored paper is preferable because it readily permits a repeated use of exactly the same color in different compositions, which allows for a precise comparison of that color's impact in varying context. Okay. I'm not sure why paint wouldn't allow for this. Why wouldn't the paint be the same color? But maybe depending on what you paint on, it could change color. So I'm starting to get where this person is going, although I have some questions.
Yeah, I'm imagining like a collage or something, you know, if I cut out pieces of the red construction paper
Mm-hmm.
and I put it into the collage, then it's not going to change color. The paper itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Presumably is going to stay the
Yeah.
same color.
Yep.
But if I was mixing paints on a canvas, that red paint isn't going to necessarily, you know, it's going to mix with the blue paint.
Yeah. I mean, it's like understandable. Oh yeah, especially if you have another paint. But there's part of me too that's just wondering, does it have to change color? Like, couldn't you do it so it's always the same? I don't know, but
Yeah.
I'm getting where they're going.
And I think you have to accept this second sentence as a premise of the argument, right? So you have to
Mm-hmm.
give them credit that this is a fact. For whatever reason, if I paint on a canvas, it might not always be the same color of red. Could be because of the background, could be because of mixing with other paint, could be because of the way the paint dries over time. The humidity in the room might affect the paint, right? I'm giving them all different reasons why the the color might not stay true if I used paint.
True. I grant that it's a premise and therefore we should accept it as true. I just don't know if it's told us that you can't do this for paint. Right? It says that paper readily permits a repeated use of the
Yeah, I mean,
exact.
it's just easier with paper for whatever reason.
So, anyways, the next sentence, however, says with paint, however, it is difficult to mix exactly the same color twice,
Okay.
and the varying textures of the applied paint can interfere with the pure effect of the color itself, which is
Oh.
what you were talking about in terms of mixing, right?
Yeah, I
And
guess what I mean to
the
say is
textures.
after that second sentence, it's that reading comprehension technique, right? After that second sentence, I was having a conversation with
Hmm.
this speaker. Like, oh, do you mean to imply that the paint, for whatever reason? And I was thinking about like 6 different reasons why maybe paint doesn't allow you to have this pure color effect,
Hmm.
which in the last sentence, they said Similar stuff to what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Hard to mix the same color twice. That's not exactly what I said, but I get it. Paint is mixed and the color might not be exactly the same. I didn't think about the texture thing at all. But now I can see how, yeah, if you lay the paint on really thick, then there might be shadows in the paint, changing the color. Apparently not the case if you just hold up the piece of construction paper.
Yeah, and this this last sentence resolved my concern of like, well, does that mean that paint can't be the same? And it's like, look, it's difficult. So
Yeah, I get what you're saying. They were implying it in the second sentence, right? The second sentence
mhm,
is really literally just about colored paper. But they had
mhm,
already said use paper, not paint.
mhm.
And then they say a good thing about paper. Well, they must mean that that good thing doesn't apply to paint. Sure enough, in the last sentence, they say, "Yeah, here's the problems if you have paint."
Yeah. My only concern with that is that on some of these harder questions, right, that's the rub. It's like, oh, but we don't know that's true for that thing. And people get upset because they're like, well, that's what I thought it said, but that was the conclusion. So, we don't know that for sure.
Right. Okay. And then
Uh,
again, wrapping it all up, what
yep.
was the conclusion of this argument?
Teachers who teach art students about color should use colored paper rather than paint. And why? Because it doesn't change color, and paint likely will.
Perfect.
Yep. Okay, which one of the following is an assumption required by the argument? This is a necessary assumption question. It's asking what answer would the author of this argument have to agree with? What would they have to concede is true if we want their argument to make any sense?
To be really
Um,
clear, that's the end of the analysis. What Ben just said is the end of the analysis. Which one does the author have to agree with? I don't want to hear students say anything else besides that. For example, oh, well, it's got to be something that was unstated that
hmm,
the author agrees with. That's not correct. We have examples of necessary assumption questions where the correct answer basically just restates the conclusion of the argument. That's not wrong. It does not have to be a missing piece. It has to be the one answer that the author must agree with. And if an answer looks like it's restating their conclusion, or if it looks like it's restating a premise, that's the answer because the author has to agree with it. Students get themselves all kinds of twisted up on necessary assumption questions because they overcomplicate it.
yeah.
You got to treat this like a must be true question. One of these 5 things the author has to agree with. That's it.
Okay. So, one thing I'm thinking right now before I even go into the answer choices is that if you boil this argument down to its core, it's like, hey, use paper over paint because paper stays the same color. It allows for exact comparisons or it allows for comparing things with the exact same color.
Yep.
Okay. Does that, are there any other things that we should consider? Right? Like, um, maybe paint is better because it's glossy. I don't know. Like,
Well, yeah. I mean, I have an objection that I think is like right on target. You know, even if I'm willing to grant you that there's a value to being able to do a precise comparison of that color's impact in varying contexts,
mhm,
even if there's a value to seeing the pure effect of color without any um, variation,
yeah,
it could also be true that these students need to learn about the variation of color.
sure.
And it could be true that You don't always want them to see a precise comparison of a color's impact in varying contexts. Maybe they need to see how red paint looks different in various contexts when mixed in different ways, when applied with varying textures. They didn't say that that's bad for art students. So there's my objection, is like, well, wait a second. Don't art students need to learn about the variation in color?
Yeah.
So the correct answer could have something to do with that.
Okay. Answer choice A. Does this need to be assumed? Two pieces of paper exactly the same color will have the same effect in a given context, even if they are of different textures.
The author does not have to agree with that. If you take a piece of super fine paper, I'm thinking about like tracing paper,
Mm-hmm.
and then you take a piece of super coarse construction paper,
Mm-hmm.
they might be exactly the same color, but have a totally different effect in different contexts. One of them is translucent and one of them is not.
Okay.
So
So
the
it's
author
out.
doesn't have to agree with A.
Yep. B. A slight difference in the color of two pieces of paper is more difficult to notice than a similar difference in the color of two samples of paint. We're not we're not talking about different colors. We're talking about the fact that they can be exactly the same.
Yeah, there's just no evidence for B. I mean, that is not what they're talking about. They didn't say the reason why we want to use paper instead of paint is that if two pieces of paper are slightly different in color, it'll be harder to tell the difference.
Mm-mm.
What?
We were talking about
Why does the
paper
you're
that's
putting
exactly the
words in the
same.
author's mouth? You're not allowed to put words in the author's mouth here, right? This is a top-down question type. We need to
Yep.
find the one that's just like, well, because it says this, we have to pick this answer.
C. Changing light conditions have less of an effect on the apparent color of a piece of paper than on the apparent color of a sample of paint. Again, it's like it's focusing on the wrong change. You have a thing that's not changing. You have paper, you have paint that's not changing. And they're saying, oh, well, when the light changes, then that apparent color changes. So what? We're talking about taking the same piece of paper and moving it to different contexts.
We're looking for the one that the passage proves the author has to believe.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to pick C, it starts off by talking about changing light conditions.
Yep.
I'm going to be like, oh, really? Okay. Show me in the passage where it talked about changing light conditions. Show me your evidence for the assertion that the author has to agree that changing light conditions have less effect on paper than they do on paint. Where's your evidence for that? We can't pick it. We don't have evidence to prove that the author has to agree with it.
Yep. D. Observing the impacts of colors across varying contexts helps students to learn about the use of color. Well, the author has to agree with this because if learning how color impacts things across different contexts doesn't help students to learn about the use of color, then why the heck are we even having this discussion?
Well, look at the second sentence. Why is colored paper preferable? That's their conclusion, by the way. Colored paper should be used to teach art students about the use of color. Why? Oh, well, because it readily permits a repeated use of exactly the same color in different compositions, which allows for a precise comparison of that color's impact in varying contexts. Why the hell did they include that if they don't think that observing the impacts of colors across varying contexts helps students learn about the use of color?
It would be irrelevant. Yep.
That was precisely what we're here to talk about, is art teachers teaching students about the use of color. The whole second sentence is directly related to this across varying contexts. D seems boring and obvious and conservative, according to this statement. Like, are you really going to tell me that you don't think the author has to agree with D?
Yeah.
That would be a real hard argument to make. I mean, why did they include that second sentence if they don't agree with what D says?
Yeah. So that's the answer. E, it is important that art students understand how the effects of using colored paper in various compositions differ from those of using paint in those compositions. The first part of this answer is not horrible. It's important for the art students to understand something, which is why this person has an opinion about this issue. But they don't need to understand how using colored paper is different from using paint. In fact, they said just use colored paper. Don't talk about paint.
Nobody ever talked about a choice being made between, well, in this project,
Yep.
should we use paint or should we use colored paper?
Yeah.
That's not the point. That's not what they're talking about. They're not talking about the art students need to learn when paper is better than paint and when paint is better than paper. That's not the point. The point is about teaching them about color.
Yep.
And if you use paper to teach them about color, it has certain advantages. Whether they use paper or paint in their composition is an entirely different issue.
Cool.
So the answer is D, and that's that.
Answer's D. Yeah, yeah. Anything else on logical reasoning?
Nope. Necessary assumption questions are probably the, if not the hardest, they're probably the second hardest type of question for most new students, or even higher level students sometimes just haven't really quite figured out what a necessary assumption question is really all about.
Yeah, they're mixing necessary and sufficient. They're like looking for the wrong thing in the wrong question. Sometimes
They think it
the question.
They think it has to be unstated. They think they have to be able to predict the answer. They just don't. Necessary assumption questions have a fairly wide range of acceptable answers and are not always predictable. But you do need to make sure that you know what the correct analysis is. The analysis we're looking for here is, which one does the author have to agree with? Which one does the record show the author has to agree with? The 4 wrong answers, the author could possibly disagree. But the one right answer is the one where the author, if you confronted them with it, the author would look at it and go, yeah, that has to be true.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's wrap it up, huh?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Thinking LSAT and at LSAT Demon. As always, please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps a ton. To get your question on the show, email help@thinkinglsat.com. If you have questions about the LSAT Demon or getting started with that or anything in that regard, email help@lsatdemon.com. That was episode 284 of the Thinking LSAT podcast. Thanks all y'all for listening. Nice knowing you. Don't pay for law school.